In example 3, we're told that the hypotenuse of a right triangle is 4 meters more than 3 times the shorter leg. We're also told that the longer leg is 3 meters more than 3 times the shorter leg. We're asked to find the length of the sides. If we're asked to find the length of the sides, this is where I'm going to start with what I'm being asked to find. So the representation section is going to include a list of what we're asked to find. So we're asked to find the length of all 3 sides. So I'm going to make a description of longer leg, shorter leg, and hypotenuse. So I'm making a list of what I'm being asked to find. If it helps, you can draw a picture of a right triangle, and we know that the hypotenuse is what's opposite of the right triangle, and one of the other legs will be shorter, so this is the shorter leg, and one of the other sides will be longer, so we'll call this the longer leg. Now we need to represent one of them with x and one of them with something that has x in it. So I'm going to go back to my first sentence that mentions one of the things that I'm being asked to find, the hypotenuse. It says the hypotenuse is, or equals, so I'm going to be finishing this sentence right here. The hypotenuse equals, I have the number 4, I have the number 3, we have the phrase more than, which we know means plus, I have times, which means multiplication, and the other thing that I'm being asked to find is actually mentioned within this description. So we're going to let the shorter leg be x. So now we know that the hypotenuse will be represented as 3 times x plus 4. The next sentence mentions something else I'm asked to find, the length of the longer leg. So we're going to read off this description for the longer leg. The longer leg equals, we have 2 more numbers mentioned, we have 3 and 3. The phrase more than means plus, the phrase times means multiplication, and once again we see that the shorter leg is mentioned. We're going to let that be x. So the phrase for the longer leg, that mathematical description, will be 3x plus 3. Now that we have completed our representation section, we will form the equation. The equation that we are going to use is the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem says that if I take a leg and square it, and add it to the length of the other leg and square it, this will be equal to the length of the hypotenuse squared. So let's plug in the values that we know. Let's take the longer leg as 3x plus 3. Let's take that quantity and square it. Let's take the shorter leg, we're going to take that quantity and we're going to square it. And this is going to be equal to the length of the hypotenuse, which is 3x plus 4, also squared. Now that we have our equation, we will need to solve it. In order to solve, we need to get rid of the parentheses. In order to get rid of the parentheses, we need to remember, what does it mean to square something? To square something, that means to multiply that quantity times itself. So 3x plus 3 squared means 3x plus 3 times 3x plus 3. I'm going to bring down the x squared, and I'm going to write also the hypotenuse as the quantity squared, or 3x plus 4 times itself. Now we will actually perform the multiplication. So we are going to FOIL in both of the locations that have the parentheses. So I get 9x squared plus 9x plus 9x plus 9. I'm going to bring down the plus x squared from the shorter leg. Now I'm going to FOIL the hypotenuse. So that will be 9x squared plus 12x plus 12x plus 16. Now I will simplify on either side, so I will combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, we have the x squared terms that are like terms, so I get 10x squared. So I'm going to combine the x squared terms to get 10x squared. I'm going to combine the x terms, so I'm going to get plus 18x and then the only thing left is that constant plus 9. On the right hand side, I can combine these two middle terms, which are like terms. Now I need to continue on my process to get the 0. To get the 0, I need to move all of the terms to one side. So I'm going to choose to move all of the terms to the left side, which means I'm going to be subtracting 9x squared from both sides. I will be subtracting 24x from both sides, and I will be subtracting 16 from both sides. Now on the right hand side we have our 0. On the left hand side I have x squared minus 6x minus 7. There are no common factors, so now I will continue to factor. So we have the 0. Now I'm going to get the product. This is actually a really nice version of the reverse FOIL. X and x, our signs are opposite, and the numbers I need are 1 and 7. Check that to make sure it works, and I believe it does. So when I go to solve, we're going to use the theorem. So with ZPT, we're going to use the theorem. We get x minus 7 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, and now I'm going to solve for x. So we get x equals 7 and x equals minus 1. Now remember that we need to remember that x represents, according to our representation section, the x represents the shortest leg of the triangle. And we're talking about meters. So does it make sense for the shorter leg to potentially be 7 meters? Does it make sense for the shorter leg to potentially be -1 meters? So we can see that when we compare these, that it's pretty obvious that this would be illogical. So I will reject the negative solution based upon the logic that we're representing the shorter leg with meters. So -1 meters is illogical. So I will keep the solution that x is equal to 7 meters. And I need to make sure that I answer the question for finding all sides of the triangle. So I will take this solution and go back up to the representation section. I found that the value of x was 7. So that means I know the length of the shorter leg is 7. How do I find the length of the longer leg and also the hypotenuse? I will take that x value of 7 and I will plug that x value of 7 in place of x in the expression that explains what the longer leg is. So 3 times 7 plus 3, that gives me 21 plus 3, and the answer now is 24 meters for the longer leg. For the hypotenuse, which is always the longest side of a triangle, I will also plug in the 7 in place of x. 3 times 7 plus 4, so I will get 21 plus 4, which gives me 25 meters. So now I know the lengths of all of the sides of the triangle: 24, 7, and 25.